What up, Pittsburgh Steelers fans? Matty P, Shannon White here for another episode of the Steelers Global Perspective. We are talking all things Pittsburgh Steelers versus Baltimore Ravens, Week 18. Win or go home for the Steelers. I love it. It's awesome. That's what we want to see from the Steelers. It's just I can't wait for this game. Shannon, I just can't wait.
Yeah, it's always it's the most physical matchups in the NFL every year. And anytime these two teams play, you know that some guys are going to miss the next week. I mean, it's just such a physical game that there's always injuries. And so when people was like, well, the Ravens might, to keep the Steelers out of the playoffs, because they don't want to play the Steelers in the playoffs, they might play some starters. I'm like, no way. Because, you can't play all second string. But anybody that, they're prime players, they're going to sit because there's just too big a risk of injury when these two teams play.
Yeah, and it's a great segue. So we'll put up the injury report. Two things to keep in mind for everyone out there: the Ravens' next game, if they beat regardless of what happens in this Steelers game, the Ravens play about 19 days later. We are also recording this on Thursday afternoon. It's coming out Friday afternoon. This show will come out in the US. So with that being the case, there may be things that change the injury report, but then the added wrinkle is exactly what Shannon mentioned there, where you are going to see players rested. So I'll bring up the injury report. We'll quickly go through it more from the Ravens side of things and the Steelers. But Steelers side of things, Trent Thompson's questionable, Minka's questionable, Atlanta Roberts is questionable. I think that's interesting with this pectoral situation. There are some types of pec injuries, and we've seen it in some of the rugby sports in Australia, where particular pec strength, I mean, if you tear a pec, you're often out for a year. But there are some of them where you can play through it. If we were week 5 or week 6, I don't think it'd be remotely questionable. I think this is a timing thing. Interested to hear what happens with Minka as we go through it. Kenny Pickett, full practice all 3 days, does create that conundrum, but they have to go with the hot hand in Mason. Najee, and so it's good because when I woke up this morning a couple hours before we did this show, Najee, we didn't have the Thursday results in terms of practice. Najee didn't practice Wednesday. Is that knee there? That's not their veteran day for him, but he did full practice through Thursday. So that's good news with Najee. Isaac Seumalo was limited Tuesday, which is a short turnaround from the game. Full on Wednesday, did not practice Thursday. I think this is a shoulder maintenance issue there. I don't see any issues there. Cam Hayward limited all week with groin. It's the end of a very long season for Cam, who came back from that groin injury. Again, I don't read anything into that. Same thing with TJ Larry and Miles Jack. They all had things going on. That's why they were limited or weren't listed in terms of practice. None of those guys, I think that's a deep issue. I would say, though, for Miles Jack, that's not helpful. We don't know what that personal situation that is. So I hope, best thoughts and wishes go out to him, depending on what that is. But it's not like he's Blake Martinez, or it's not like he's Jalen Smith, although it does bring up, does Jalen Smith, will we see a bit more from Jalen Smith? Does he get a helmet for this game? I think from Miles Jack's perspective, obviously he knows that defense. So it's not like it's going to ruin us, particularly if you bring back Atlanta Roberts or are able to get him on the field. That's an interesting thing to see. We'll go into the Ravens quickly and then want to get all your perspective.
One quick point I wanted to mention. You might not have seen it yet. Landon Roberts, they asked him after practice today, his status. He says, "I'm playing." And
okay, I haven't seen that, so that's good news.
They're like, they said, is it a pain tolerance thing or are you that, much healed? And he cut him off and he says, "I'm playing." So we got to remember, Landon Roberts is a warrior.
Yeah, it's true.
And a warrior is always ready for battle. Standing on the sidelines is killing him. He wants to be a part of this rivalry. He was so fired up in the first edition of this rivalry this season in the first game, and asking him to be on the sidelines or inactive is not an option. So he emphatically said today, "I'm playing."
I love that. Okay, that's good. That's good news. This is why, see, Steel fans, when you listen to Matty and Shannon, you get a true global perspective. We cross all the global time zones.
The time zones.
It's a whole thing. I'm in the future. You know,
really.
Everyone watched the final Steelers game of 2023. I watched the first Steelers game of 2024. You know, like it's a whole different thing, right? That we got going on here. You know, the time continuum in the multiverse, depending on who's into Marvel. All right, let's get into a large injury report for the Ravens. Now, they've not really listed a lot of players. They haven't updated their Thursday injury report designations yet. Now that's interesting. Like last week when I did my we did the live show for the weekly touchdown under. It was quite funny because mid-show the report updated, so we covered that twice. Although the live chat loved that. That was quite funny. But Odell Beckham Jr. was rested. There's not, and this frustrates me, Shannon. We haven't deeply talked about my frustrations with the NFL and injury reports. When people sometimes have nothing there, there's a non-listed designation, there's a questionable designation. The whole thing, they even make, DNP does not actually stand for did not practice. It stands for did not participate in practice. Why not just make it simple? Did not practice. That's why I make it simple.
Yeah.
Did not practice. Anyway, that's enough about my gripes with the NFL. There'll be plenty of them later on in the offseason. But Odell Beckham Jr. did not practice Wednesday, not listed anything for the Tuesday, Thursday practices. He's someone that I do think they probably would rest this week. Ronald Darby, cornerback, a veteran cornerback, did not practice Wednesday, not listed Thursday, not listed Tuesday. Zay Flowers, he is one of the players that I've heard a lot of talk around the NFL community that he would be rested, particularly if Lamar's rested. Why would you stress that calf in a game they don't have to win? Kyle Hamilton, who congratulations to him for making the Pro Bowl, and actually we should have congratulated a few players on that, but he was limited on Tuesday, did not practice Wednesday. We should see what his designation is. He's a player, again, that I could see them, even if they give him a helmet, I think they'll dial back his snaps. Malik Harrison didn't practice for them. Marlon Humphrey didn't practice calf. Again, I would think Marlon Humphrey would be someone they'd consider resting. Lamar was limited on Wednesday, doing bare minimum. You can't, surely he's not playing. Arthur Mollett, the former Steeler, limited Tuesday, Wednesday. Depth piece for them. I'm not deeply worried about that. Delshon Phillips, their linebacker, he's out. He's potentially out with the shoulder, but he was limited on Wednesday. We'll see what happens. But Patrick Queen is another player who was limited up until all the information we've got. You'd think that, he's probably a guy that's rested. Brandon Stevens, their cornerback, really physical cornerback. Really like him. He has an ankle complaint. We'll see what happens. He's been limited all week. Kyle Van Noy, who a lot of people were hoping would join the Steelers in the offseason, he's been limited all week so far without knowing what the Thursday practice designation was. Talon Wallace, their wide receiver, limited on Wednesday, nothing else listed. If Odell Beckham's not playing and Zay Flowers is playing, you'd assume they'll try and get into play. They've got a safety with a pec injury that was limited. And then the big name really left on the sheet right now is Kevin Zeitler. I've heard he is one. He was limited on Tuesday, did not practice Wednesday. I've heard that he is, from what I've been able to pick up across different NFL social media and Ravens insiders, is that he is unlikely to play. And that is also because he's a candidate to be rested. So I don't know, like it's not necessarily all the scary pieces on this injury report, but there's certainly not going to be the Ravens, the week in, week out Ravens that we've seen to date in the NFL season so far.
Just looking at the list, and I would even add Smith,
Roquan,
their Pro Bowl linebacker, besides Patrick Queen. Why would you even risk playing him? And all these guys have injuries that you give them 2 weeks, and you said they'll have 19 days. If you give them 2 weeks, a lot of these injuries are going to be close to 100%. And so, in my opinion, based on what they have to gain versus what they have to lose, risk, reward, I see all these guys sitting. And the Steelers, like you think a guy like Trufant, a guy like that, that's not that big a risk. You're talking about a slot corner a role player. But these other guys that are mainline starters, like Zeitler and all them, they're not playing. They're going to sit.
Yeah, you'd have to think so. I think it's interesting how they go with the run game as well. We'll get into that. Cracking straight into Steelers Ravens. A lot of things we can talk about keys to victory. I did a show in the week where I talked about the Steelers' average play per drive is literally less than or equivalent to exactly what the Ravens allow. But on defense, the average play per drive that the Steelers allow, which is like 2 minutes and 44 seconds, is literally what the Ravens average per drive. So I think the Steelers dominating the ball is interesting, but then you throw into the mix who's on the field and who's not. Third down, and obviously time of possession and average play per drive comes in here. But time of possession, the Steelers right now are averaging like 36.2% completion on third down offensively. 36.7%. The Ravens only allow 36.2%. So the Steelers are in an interesting boat here, like where the Ravens have kind of got their number across some of these statistics. Before we crack into the minutiae and the ins and outs of the keys to victory for each team and strengths and weaknesses, as an overall, in the context of them resting players, in the context of the Ravens being the number one seed, how confident are you going into this game about the fact the Steelers can actually take the game away and come away with a win?
Well, if the Ravens if this was fighting for the division, like I thought it could be earlier in the year, without that 3-game losing streak, that's when the Ravens really pulled away from the Steelers. If this was a game for the division, I would not be very confident, because Baltimore is a house of horrors for the Steelers. The Steelers either play a really close game in Baltimore or they get blown out.
Yeah.
And this year, Baltimore is the better team. They're the more balanced team. They're the more talented team. And they've proven that by what they did to the 49ers and the Dolphins in back-to-back weeks. They are peaking at the right time. What gives the Steelers real hope this year has been, or for this game, is the fact that the Ravens have clinched and they have so many of their starters. There's no rational or logical reason to play them. So that allows the Steelers to match up much better. And so I feel more confident than I normally would have, based on who's going to be playing and who isn't.
Yeah. With the Ravens run game, so obviously everyone knows about how many yards Lamar's had on the season, and he's their he had over 800 yards. He's their top running back. Because to me, stopping their run will change the game for this, and it was what destroyed the Steelers at the end of 2019 in the game they had to beat Baltimore to scrape into the playoffs with, which also was unfortunately, it would have been different had Mason Rudolph played in that one, I think, as well. It's so funny how things cycle through.
Yeah.
But they've got Gus Edwards there with 762 yards on the season. They've got Justice Hill with 387. They've got Keaton Mitchell with 396 yards. So they've got 3 other. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So I just didn't when I look at it like this. But they've got Melvin Gordon sitting there on the roster as well. I haven't heard much about him. I think when you're resting Lamar, then you've kind of got to play everyone that you've had available so far on the season. Like, I don't think you can afford to not play your top running back. So, but how equipped do you think the Steelers are at shutting down the Ravens run game? Because to me, I think that's the number one key to victory.
Yeah. Huntley, has had success against Pittsburgh in the past. He's a kind of a poor man's Lamar Jackson, but he's won playoff game for him in the past. He's won some games to help the Ravens when Jackson's been out, and he's also a quality runner. He's a harder guy to tackle. He's bigger.
Yeah.
And he likes to use the tight end a lot. So Lively will be a somebody they really need to focus on. The running game, they were explosive when they had Mitchell, but then Mitchell went down with that knee injury, and now they're more grinders. Gus the Bus, he'll want to run you over, and the Steelers had a couple of drives they didn't look good on run defense against the Seahawks, and but then you quickly noticed Adams come out, and Benton's got the majority of the snaps, and they started to plug up the middle. So I would suspect that you'll see more Benton on the interior than you will Adams, and use Adams more in passing downs.
Yeah.
So I think they can hold up in the running game, especially if Landon Roberts does get.
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. I think sometimes we forget about that interior. It's kind of interesting as well when we talk about defense, because right now Baltimore is first in the league on takeaway difference at +12, and the Steelers are second with +11. Now, we talked about in our other show this week around how the Steelers got to 7-4. We talked a little bit about that. And turnovers was a big one. Obviously, turnovers is a big factor in any game. This is why it fills me with a lot of confidence going into this game, with the Steelers having to be at full strength and the Ravens either having injury issues that are caused by their number one seed or are resting players. This is an area of the game where I just feel like if the Steelers get 2 turnovers, they win this game. But I guess the takeaway difference, I'm saying talk about takeaway difference. I didn't talk about interceptions and fumble recoveries and that. Takeaway difference being they haven't given the ball away either.
Yeah.
The Ravens are the only team better in the league than them at that. Do you think the Steelers have something over the Ravens in terms of being able to take the football away?
Well, it's funny. I think it's more likely when Lamar plays, because the Steelers have had Lamar's number.
It's true.
They really have. And
well, we're 5 from the last 6.
Oh, yeah. And
4 from the last 5.
And out of, Lamar's only played, I think, did I read 8 games total against the Steelers?
Yep.
Because he's missed all the rest. And but if you look, not only is the AFC North quite likely going to finish the season with every team over 500.
Crazy.
But look at the turnover differentials for all 4 teams. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, that's just another reason that the AFC North is the best division in football.
Yeah.
Because it's the most physical division by far. The NFL is not a very physical league anymore, Matty.
Oh,
we know that. The rules won't allow it.
Yeah.
But if you watch all 4 teams, they are very physical. Even if the Bengals have had a down year on defense. They're all very physical, and they protect the football. Because I know at one point the Bengals were leading the NFL in turnover margin.
They were, yeah. And
they would drop back a little bit, but they're still way on the plus side. So I think the Steelers, just the familiarity between the 2 teams, the Steelers have lost to backup quarterbacks. Steelers have beat the Ravens with their backups. It's just the 2 teams. Thomas, I can't think of his first name, that used to be a linebacker for the Ravens, said 2 days ago, he said that it comes down to will. Which team wants it the most and can hold out the longest in the game? Because the record don't matter, the talent don't matter, because they're just so familiar with each other that it turns into a game of wills. And so I think this could be very similar, even with the Ravens playing all their backups or a lot of backups. I think it's going to be a tough game, a close, hard-fought game. And I do believe it'll come down to the 4th quarter.
Yeah, and you touched on a couple of things there that relate exactly to my next point, which is going to be, in terms of who wants it more. Steelers had, by my count, it was 3 rushing touchdowns last week.
Yes.
And the Ravens have only allowed 5 rushing touchdowns on the season so far. Now, obviously, we talked about Queen maybe being rested. You don't probably rest Roquan Smith, so it changes. Think the Steelers can score like over or under? Can the Steelers score more than 2 touchdowns on this Ravens team? Because I mean, they've only allowed 5 on the season so far, and rushing touchdowns are a big key to victory for the Steelers. Meanwhile, I will say this: the Ravens have conceded 17 touchdowns on offense this season, and at least Mason Rudolph's back there throwing the football. But moving back to the rush touchdowns, can the Steelers run on the Ravens?
Well, the Ravens have incredible size on the interior defensive line. They've got that one young man. Is his last name Washington?
Yes.
I think it's. I mean, he looks like he's like 6 foot and 400 pounds. Yeah. He is low and slow, and he's
Broderick Washington Jr.
Yeah, he's a monster. I mean, the dude is. I think somebody said he's 370 pounds, depending if it's before or after breakfast. So
he's got 2 sacks on the season, 3 tackles for a loss, 5 quarterback hits.
You just ain't moving that dude. So he's your prototypical old school nose tackle. So Cole and Samalu and Daniels are going to have their hands full. So I believe they can be successful, like they did last week with push the pile, drag guys for 4 yards. Harris needs to really, don't run lateral. He's got to go keep his shoulders square to the line of scrimmage and take what's there. And then Warren can break a tackle and pop one here or there as he does. But you're just not going to make a living, especially in the red zone.
Yeah.
Against the Ravens running the football. The 49ers couldn't do it with McCaffrey. The Dolphins couldn't do it with their speed that they have. Even Mozart and the other young man in the back.
Devin Arcane or Archane, however you want to say it.
It starts with an A. I can't think of it. But so I think the Steelers are to have success. We need to say, hey, that's a 3-yard run. I'm happy. We're going in the right direction. Move the chains and keep them honest so you can set up the pass.
I feel like that's it. I think it's that fluidity on offense. I think that Mike Tomlin likes to talk about. I think Pat's in for a big day in this game. I think Pat's in for a huge day.
He needs to be working the middle, especially with who's going to be out.
Yeah, 100%. Because I think, absolutely huge. I think stopping Likely, as you mentioned, is huge for the Steelers as well.
He's a terrible matchup for the Steelers because he's basically a big wide receiver.
Totally.
He runs like one. He looks like one. He's not in there for his blocking. But man alive, you lose Andrews and you think, well, that might hurt him. Well, Likely has become Lamar's favorite target.
Well, and the other person that I think that a lot of people miss, I really wanted him to be a Steeler, to be honest, but Devin Duvernay, he could be a real, the Steelers better watch out for him with Odell Beckham being out and Zay Flowers being out. He can play. He hasn't done much this year. He's been mostly special teams for them because of the depth they've had at wide receiver. He's literally had 4 receptions for 18 yards, but that guy can play. I saw enough of him when I, as a Texas fan, that guy can play football. So, I think it's interesting from that.
I was shocked he lost his returner position.
I know.
Wallace has been good, but Duvernay was a very good kick returner.
Well, let's close the show out with that because I think everyone knows it, win or go home for this Steelers team. Let's close out with the Pro Bowl. So we got to congratulate TJ, Miles Killebrew, Miles Killebrew, TJ and TJ didn't make it. It was Miles Killebrew, Minkah Fitzpatrick that made it through to the Pro Bowl for the AFC and Cam Hayward. Then the Ravens had 7 players, I think, make the AFC Pro Bowl team. Obviously, it's fan voted, so it's a bit different. But isn't it nice? I mean, you talked about it with Killebrew as well and the awful narrative that went around. Mark talked about it as well. The awful narrative that went around the death threats. I thought it was really nice that Killebrew got to make the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so happy for that young man. Since he come to Pittsburgh from the Lions, Detroit Lions, he has played, he's represented everything you want out of a Pittsburgh Steeler. The guy just does his job. You know, he can say, hey, I can start at strong safety this year when Kazee really is not a strong safety.
No.
And Neal is we knew what he was coming in. He's basically a linebacker now. He doesn't have the speed. And Kilbrew could have raised, you know, he's had a great attitude. He's your special teams captain. He's like, put me out there. And he makes plays. And once he's blocked 3 punts,
yeah,
I think in his career already. And so, I mean, I was so disappointed in the small segment of Steeler fans that did him that way. But the rest of us, we truly appreciate him and all his contributions. TJ Watt, I think he should be Defensive Player of the Year.
I can't believe even the betting odds have Myles Garrett there. I can't.
I think he had a great opportunity if he'd had a big game against the Seahawks, but the Seahawks made sure he didn't.
Yeah.
And so now we'll see what happens this last game. I don't know. But I think Mika made it out of reputation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's not his fault. I think this is his. I admire him more this season than I ever have.
Yeah.
Because he has done anything and everything that the team needed to be competitive.
Totally.
And he sacrificed his ball hawking and his all-pro status to fill in because the Steelers made a mistake with Terrell Edmonds. So I'm very proud of all three of them. I think it's that they will represent the Steelers well.
Yeah, I love it. And then to close out the show, do you have a score prediction for this game?
Well, I'm going to stick with my prediction from last night on Pump Your Brakes, and I predicted 21-17 Ravens. Now, understand, I picked the Steelers to lose the 2 weeks prior, and they proved me wrong. I'm not breaking the streak. I'm not jinxing them by picking them to win this week. I don't care if the Ravens are playing their backups. I predict the Steelers to lose so they can prove me wrong for 3 weeks in a row.
I'm going 23-19 Steelers. Yeah. John Harbaugh will go for 2 on one of the plays and miss. That's my prediction.
He always does. He does something aggressive to try to win. So, you know, he has nothing to lose this week. So the Steelers better be ready for anything.
The thing, though, that I like is John Harbaugh, nothing to lose, is different from everyone else, nothing to lose. Yes, John Harbaugh, nothing to lose is just John Harbaugh, nothing to lose is like Mitch Trubisky with a deep ball. That's what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
But with that, we're going to wrap up this Steelers preview from the Steelers Global Perspective duo. I'm Matty P with Shannon White. As always, go Steelers.